Hey everyone, this is Bench85. Welcome back to another episode of Kerbal Space Program. Today we're starting out in the VAB because I want to show you guys something that I think is really cool to try and do when you're learning how to play this game. So first of all, I'm going to throw in a probe car. See, what I'm going to do is build myself basically a generic lifter, if you will. When I first started out, I was building a lot of custom rockets. You build your payload on top and you build something on the bottom to get it into space. No big deal. That's what everybody seems to do. But I learned that if you build a designated lifter for a certain size payload, it makes it a whole lot easier, especially now that we have sub-assemblies. So I want to show you guys a little tip on how to really work them out. So I start out with my probe core. Obviously that's what I'm going to be working with, and in this case I'm also going to be putting on my fairing next. Oh, not interstage. Here it is, fairing. These can be a little tricky sometimes if you do it from down below. You can get it to find the right attach node right there. Okay, there we go, it's centered. Now normally what I will do is I will put on one of these guys, an actual docking port, like so, and then I'll attach my payload above that for two reasons. Number one, I don't like having a decoupler there because it's very easy to accidentally stage your payload out and then you lose it, and it's not necessarily a bad thing unless it's when you don't want it to be staged out. So docking port eliminates that. On top of that, it also gets rid of the extra ejection force that a decoupler has. So you can just decouple it and it'll just sit there, which is, I think, really important when you're bringing payloads up to like a space station or something. You don't want to shoot them off in an opposite direction before your tug can pick up the payload. So I use a clampotron, or docking port. But the problem is that when you're trying to figure this out, a docking port is cross-feed capable. So if I have some sort of a tank, no, regular tank, underneath here, let's say an upper stage engine like so, anything in this payload gets figured into this delta phi up here, which is going to be a problem when you start working these numbers out. Because when I use a payload, or when I figure out a payload, I like to use fuel tanks. Why? Because they're easy to configure. So I'm actually going to switch this out for a decoupler, at least for now. There we go. And actually the decoupler's got to be above here. Now you'll notice that it's showing me two stages. It's showing me the fuel stage here, and it's showing me the payload stage on top. Now what I normally do, let's say I'm making, in this particular one, what I was designing was a 5-ton lifter. So I look for a rocket tank here. This one's got 2.6 for mass. This one's got a little more than 5. So what I'll do is I'll stick that up on top. As you can see, it's got 5,300 kilograms, roughly 54. 5 ton would be 5,000. So what you can do is right click and you can toggle your fuel down. You just watch up there and you get it as close as you can. Alright, that gets you your 5 ton on top. Now if I had the docking port here, it would be counting this fuel down here. Right now it's keeping it separate. So that's how I normally do it. From there I will build the rocket all the way down, and when I'm done, just take this off, put your docking port on top, and like this. Then something that's very important to remember, if you want to use sub-assemblies, you can see I already have this one built, you need to drag it over here. Now here's the problem. You want to do it from the piece that you attach it from, which would be the clampotron junior here in this case. If you click it and pull it over, well, all you're going to get is the docking port. That's because in order for the sub-assemblies to work properly, you need to do it from what would be considered the root part, which is the first part you place down. That would be this. Well, that does me no good because you can't attach it anymore. So I have select route installed, and all you have to do is hold down Control Shift. You'll see here the highlight turns blue instead of green. That's telling me that I can select my route. I left click, new route, it said Clampetron Jr. Now I can click it and drag it, just like that. But I'll show you guys instead. Yeah, let's just throw this in here. You'll see here, if I bring this guy in, you'll see I have my rocket already pre-built, and then this would be the payload above it. So with that, guys, I have to build our payload because we have ourselves a contract. I know what you're thinking, contract? Well, that's just ridiculous. We're not in career mode. Well, there's going to be a little bit of role playing involved, and you see Scantron, one of our companies here, decided that they wanted us to test out some of their scanning technology, and they would like to be able to scan the moon, but first we need to launch a test one around Kerbal just to make sure that our rockets are safe and that the satellites that's designed that we're taking up for payload will function properly. So I gotta build that, and I will meet you guys out on the launch pad where we will launch the rocket. Alright guys, welcome back. Here we are on the launch pad. 3, 2, 1, fire. We're doing this at sunset for a particular reason, and you'll also find that I am turning it over to the north instead of the east this time, because this is our first launch with this booster. Actually, it's our first launch with the Cygnus payload. Now, because of FAR and the way things work here with the aerodynamics, at some point here, it may get a little unstable. It's going to move around a bunch. Just kind of got to let it run its course. Maybe toggle the torque a couple times. Let it try and calm out. There we go. Looks like we're doing pretty good now. We got through the rough part. So, why are we headed north? 2 reasons. Actually, no. There's only 1 reason. This is supposed to be a satellite for scanning, because that is what our goal is. I gotta be careful here because when the 2 side boosters start to run out, they can get a little squirrely as well. I'm actually gonna throttle down a little bit. Let those 2 run out. Eject them. Now we're going to lay this baby over. Be careful though, because we're still far enough in the atmosphere that it can get squirrely. Because it's a scanning satellite, if you think about how an orbit is when you're going east around the equator, you're only going to scan right along the equator, and that's no good for a scanning satellite. Now we're actually going to lay this over, but we're going to push our apoapsis up to, I think, about 250 to, yeah, I think about 250 kilometers. Maybe just a touch under it. No, actually a little over it. We're going to go for 300. That's what we're going to go for. But anyways, as I was saying, if you go to the north, you're going to go across the poles, and the planet is actually going to spin around you, underneath you. We just reached space. And that's 300. Just about on the dot. Now we got a periapsis still in the atmosphere. Since we're in space, we can inject our fairings, and you can see our satellite here. It's a nice looking satellite. I kind of like it. The biggest thing is it's using ion propulsion, and it has a docking port on the top so that we can expand it if we want to, especially if we start getting into some of our other what do you want to call them? Sensors. That's what I'm going for. Electric charge is not too bad. I'm not too worried about it at the moment. The reason I launched at sunset. I am lost for words. If you notice, as we're traveling kind of along the Terminator, as it's called. Now, because of the way the planet moves and because of our orbit, I have 8 minutes to apoapsis. That's why I can keep talking. It will actually hold like this. So, because our satellite runs on electricity, we will always be in the sun. So we will always have electric power. Let's see. Since our periapsis is still in the atmosphere here, I'm actually going to eject the bottom stage. This will fall back. Now we've got a much smaller rocket to contend with. And I really have two ways I could do this. I could use the ion propulsion to get it all the way up. It would take a while, but it's doable. Or I can just use this stage and eject it off. So what I might do is I might bring the periapsis all the way up to maybe about 25 kilometers and then switch over to the ion propulsion. That would be my guess. So let's accelerate up to our apoapsis. 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, and I gotta watch here. Electric charge is doing great. So I'm gonna bring this back down. And I'm kind of doing it a little bit like role playing. I don't want to accelerate hard with our solar panels out. I'm actually going to stick this over here. I want to try and straighten out our orbit just a little bit. Our inclination is about 85 degrees. I'd like it a little bit closer to 87 so we can actually pull this over a little bit if we thrust in this direction. Got about a minute left. I'm going to accelerate just a little bit. You'll see our inclination will come up a little bit. I'm going to swing this all the way over here. So we're kind of doing two birds with one stone type of deal. We are using torque to hold ourselves because this engine is not gimbaled. So let's speed this up a little bit. Doing good, doing good, doing good. I'm watching my periapsis height right now. We're bringing our inclination over. Apoapsis is staying above 100,000 or 300,000 right now. Let's bring this back up to the horizon. Actually, I think I've changed how we can still do it. Okay, we actually, I think, oh, we flipped. Because we're going over the top of the pole, our prograde vector is actually flipping right now. So now we'll shrink down. We got 86 for an inclination, so that's pretty good. Okay, so we just switched. Let's cut this loose. We're going to decouple node. That is unattached. Let's extend our panels. Now we're looking like a satellite. We're gonna spacebar, engage our engine, and we need to throttle up. We're still holding on our prograde vector, and we need to get this guy all the way up around this range. Now I'm going to do it in a double pass. I'm going to get my periapsis above 70 so that we are completely in space. Just kind of holding it on here, and I will come back on the second lap and we'll fix it so that we got a nice even orbit. And I'll come back to it when we're done. Alright guys, here we are. Isn't it such a beautiful sight? I love the fact that it follows the Terminator. You get the night side here. You get the nice light side here. And let's see. Bring back my orbital view. I'm starting to come up over the pole a little bit. Oh, we have a little bit. The Cygnus probe is the debris. Because we have, actually it might not have any power on it, but because its periapsis is in the atmosphere, we can get it to crash and burn. I'll just have to key on it. But yeah. So we're up here. What is our main goal? We need to start mapping. So we're going to start up the SAR scanner here. That will start scanning. We're also going to come in here and start the multispectral scan. That one's kind of cool. It kind of pops out. So let's bring in a small map here. We got biome anomaly, and this I think means that it's not quite in its ideal. I'm not sure. Let's see. Big map. We're gonna see if we're pulling in any data. We are right here. Yep, we're pulling in a little bit. Okay, so basically how you have to do this now is you can speed it up a little bit. And you just basically allow it to scan. And it's just gonna take its time and it's gonna do a whole bunch of scanning. And the cool part is because Scansat allows you to scan multiple scanners at once when you're at warp. Oh, let's change this to free. There we go. You can watch us flying around. I can actually key up on, or get a bunch of these satellites up, like on different planets, and just let them go. Whee! There's some aurora. Ooh, that was pretty. So alright guys, we have a second one of these to launch, and I'll meet you when we got it ready to transfer. Alright guys, we are back. I have the rocket in orbit, and I'm setting up a maneuver node at the moment. It's going to be in 12.5 minutes, and I'm using precise node at the moment. I've changed the conics mode. Normally it's in 3. Apparently it's not changing. Anyways, I usually change it to 0, because what it does then is it shows me my trip out. When the encounter hits is right there, the orbit changes to here, and then it will actually appear there. It looks a little confusing, but mostly I want to be able to see this. So now what I need to do is start tweaking this a little bit. Actually, I want to go see if I can tip this around. I'm not exactly sure why it doesn't want to show this for me. Sometimes the maneuver nodes can get messy, if you will. Now it shows way back there. Okay, there we go. Now we've got a nice one. And actually, because of where I'm traveling here, yeah, we're gonna have to make a mid-course correction. So because of that, we'll do this particular maneuver node. We'll get our prograde, we'll get our encounter, I gotta spin this guy around somehow. And we will perform our burn. And I'll meet you on the mid-course correction. Alright guys, we are back. As you can see, I set up another maneuver node. I did it right on the ascending node so that I could easily adjust my normal. Because if you remember, I'm coming in at this angle right here. I want it to come over the north-south pole, remember. Now we are going to be going, we're not on the terminator, but hopefully we have enough electric power stored in our batteries when we come around the back side. We will find out. So I'll quick move over to here, and I don't know if it's, some people consider it cheating, some people not, but whenever I set up for these, instead of stopping it, you know, momentum on its own, I tend to warp, time warp when it gets close, and it'll actually freeze it. Actually, we're going to switch to this, because this is going to be a neat view. Watching my electric charge as we leave the planet behind. Goodbye, Kerbal. Too bad we're leaving it on the night side. So it's telling me a 4-second burn. So we'll get right down to about there. Locking our SAS. Now I want to switch back to this view actually. And we're going to burn. Yeah, it freaked out. We're going to let it come all the way around and right about there. Hey, that works for me. So we're going to bring this up. I'm aiming for 150. There we go. Now we'll close out of our maneuver node and we are set to go. At least I thought we did. Oh, that's right. It's showing me my future orbit. So let's head back to this view. Which fuel do we have left? A lot. Okay, we're going to use the fuel in there to slow us down. I need to watch the electric charge here. We do not want to mess that up. So yes, home disappears. Plenty of electric charge. We are headed to the moon. And it's generally not a good idea to warp at high speed past this encounter, because as it switches SOIs, or spheres of influence, it can really tweak your numbers. Oh, actually I just did it anyways. We stayed pretty close. Let's focus back in on our satellite. Let's come back to this view. Isn't that cool? Now it's actually showing us now our stats based on the moon. So we got to get around to our periapsis, which will be our closest point. There it is. I don't want to go flying past it. Stop a little bit short, about the 2-minute mark. We need to find ourselves a retrograde marker. See, this will be our retrograde right here with the X in it, because we actually want to slow down. Just like so. We'll speed up a little bit. I want to get as close to the periapsis as possible. And when you make these maneuvers, if you're close to either the periapsis or the apoapsis, depending on which direction you want to be, either speeding up or slowing down, it'll be the most efficient. So now we just throttle up a little bit. And actually, if we show this, what it's going to do is it's going to start bringing this around. It'll curl its way around. We'll watch this. It's showing a negative apoapsis because it's going to escape. And when it hits a certain point, it'll curl around and we will make ourselves an orbit. Ta-da! Now we'll try and bring this down to a 150 by 150, or as close as we can to it. Take it in nice and slow. We've got a lot of fuel. That rocket is designed for 5 tons, that's for sure. Because this is a 2.5 ton satellite, and we took it all the way to the moon on its rocket. So that's okay. It's rated. It'll do a little bit more than what it's rated for. So that's pretty close. So let's zoom back in. We aren't going to be needing that engine anymore. So let's extend our panels so we can get some charge in here so we don't forget. There we go. We're getting some electricity back in. Okay, this is what I wanted to make sure. If I get the electric charge on here at 100% like that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to decouple the node. It switches to the satellite. Right away, I want to switch to here. We're going to turn it. I don't have a lot of electricity. Turn it away from the satellite, light the engine. There we go, get it out of our way. And now I'm going to burn retrograde again. So our satellite disappears, and we're going to bring our periapsis all the way down to 0. Like so. If we come back here, you'll notice that this guy is headed in for a collision course. It gets rid of our debris, basically. M. So we have a whole bunch of electricity. We have an ion engine that is activated. And let's start up our scanners. We'll see where we are on, we'll go to small map. Well, it looks like it's showing that we're too low. So we'll probably have to tweak orbits, and I'll do it with both of them. Get our orbits set in the right direction, or the right height, and get our scanners working properly. But with that, guys, this is going to be the end of the episode. We basically have everything set up where we want it to be. We need to get some scanning done on the moon, and it'll lead into our next episode, where I think we take a Kerbal to the moon. So as always, take it easy.